Good evening all and welcome. Before we begin tonight's journey into the Haunted Woods, I have a very quick announcement. As many of you probably know, kids are going to be off school for the summer holidays very shortly. And so I am preparing all my stories, recording-wise, for the summer season. Which means if you are a patron or plan on being so in the near future and you have your birthday over the summer, please message me ASAP to get your birthday topic and shout-out recorded, because once summer starts, I will be unable to record any new material, so please, get that sent in now. But for now, it's time to get comfortable, and let the darkness take control. I've never been a big fan of camping. Circa 2012, for some reason or another, my friends and I decided to take a Saturday night to camp on private property. We had permission from the owner, on the bank of a small lake in the rural American Southwest. The lake wasn't very large, probably only 50 to 150 yards across. It was more of a deep pond really, but it was 5 times as long as it was wide, and from our perspective of our camp, it consumed the majority of our sightline. The plot of land itself wasn't entirely removed from civilization. We were 5 to 10 miles outside a small suburb of a mid-sized southern city. It definitely was not easy to access, however, and the only way in was a gated narrow dirt road across a levee which spanned one side of the lake. This road was gated and locked. The owner gave us his code, we pulled the car through and locked the gate behind us. If you've never been down south, you'll know how quickly it gets isolated outside of cities. Our cities are small, and the rural people around often live rough and wild. We have dense woods so thick they're not worth building in unless you have some connection or attachment to the area. I've heard it was not profitable to cut roads through a lot of them when they were building highways in the 50s, so not much development has happened in the last 100 years, and in some places since the Civil War. It's not uncommon to go for a 30-minute drive straight out of town and come upon cabins that are obviously off the grid. My friends and I were used to living in the suburbs, so we were just happy to see stars and hear the sounds of nature. We were at our very utilitarian camp, small Coleman 2-person tent and a blanket, simply looking around and enjoying the night, when suddenly my buddy sat up really straight. He said something like, "Do you see that guy over there?" He pointed to the other side of the small lake, and I didn't see anything. I sat up slightly and said, "That's just the dark playing tricks on you." He seemed actually shaken. "No, look, there's a bunch of faces behind the tree now." That got my attention, and I sat up, rubbing my eyes to try and gain full focus. And then I saw them. Small, round, white faces stared back at me from across the lake, perhaps 15 to 20 of them. All were positioned in such a way that their bodies were behind the trees and only their heads were visible. The best way I can describe the faces is like very pale, somewhat internally illuminated children. I should mention that neither of us were drinking or high. We were too young for that. Not for at least a few more years anyway. We had eaten our dinner at home and were just planning to go to sleep after chilling out for a while. The faces weren't moving. I was kind of sitting there in shock, thinking that my eyes would adjust and I would see that they were a reflection, bugs or owls or something. But I never would come to that realization. I stared right back at them for what felt like 5 minutes, looked back at my friend, and then they were gone. Bodies of water carry sound extremely well, and we heard extensive shuffling from the other side of the lake, and a couple of small branches snap. It's incredible what your ears pick up during an otherwise silent night. My buddy was tearing up a little when he said, "The hell are those?" And I didn't have a good answer. Neither of us slept particularly well. I definitely felt validated in my feelings of disliking camping. But what were we going to do? I tried to do some research on the internet, but never found a phenomenon that could explain that. If anyone has some answers, I'd love to hear them. About 3 years ago, right after finishing senior school, I joined a residential trip to Cattleston through the National Citizenship Service. It was one of the best experiences of my life. An unforgettable month, filled with laughter, good times, friendship, and for me personally, a little bit of teenaged romance. All of my friends were there, and during the program, I grew close to a boy who I really liked at the time. We spent a lot of time together, talking, wandering the grounds, slipping away during the quiet moments, and on our last full night at the YHA Cattleston, we decided to sneak off into the nearby forest, just the two of us. It was near midnight, the woods were still and quiet, and we eventually came across one of those wooden step stiles, those little steps built into fences so that you can climb from one field to another. We took a step and sat facing opposite directions, me facing the forest and he the open field behind him. There was something tense in the air that night. We were chatting, and things got a little emotional. He opened up about his grandmother's passing, and I could see the tears forming in his eyes. The atmosphere changed. It felt like we weren't alone anymore. And that's the moment I saw it. Behind him, deeper in the tree line, something moved. A towering figure, easily 7 feet tall, standing behind one of the trees. It was holding onto the thick trunk, leaning just enough to peer around it, watching us. At first I thought it was a trick of the moonlight, but then it moved. It had the shape of a man, broad shoulders, long limbs, perfectly proportioned, but it wasn't solid. It was translucent, like cigarette smoke trapped in a human form. The scariest part, though, was that he saw it too. We both froze, just staring, unable to speak, our eyes locked on this ghostly figure that stared right back. For a moment, everything stood still. Then, as if it realized we had seen it, it twitched and darted. It didn't run like a person. It moved sideways, unnaturally smooth and fast, almost gliding. And then in one surreal and impossible moment, it folded into itself, collapsed into a single orb of light, and shot into the trees and vanished. We sat there in silence, breathless. My skin had turned cold, my entire body buzzing with fear and disbelief. The next morning I tried to convince myself we were just overtired, that perhaps we imagined it. But then one of the girls in our group, someone who was known for being really into the paranormal, approached me with this weird look on her face. She didn't say hello, she didn't ask how I was. She just looked at me dead in the eyes and said, "Did you see something last night?" Yeah. And then she nodded, knowingly. "Yes, I saw it too. On Monday. A tall man, sort of see-through like a white shadow. I could see him from my bedroom window." Even now, thinking about that night sends shivers down my spine. I tried to search hauntings in the area but couldn't find anything. Nothing about spirits or ghost sightings. But we both know what we saw. It wasn't just a story or a trick of the light, it was real. And probably the worst part was having someone else confirm it. I've never been able to explain what I used to see as a kid, but I figured if there's any place that might offer insight, it's here. I've seen shadow people before, and while those are unnerving, these were different. I've never met anyone who's seen what I have. The one weird constant? Water and woods. I know it sounds ridiculous, but that combination seems to be a common thread every time I saw them. So picture this. A person, or something shaped like a person, wearing solid blue from head to toe. Every bit of clothing was the exact same shade of blue, like it had been dipped in paint. Their skin, if you could call it that, was a pale pink, almost like raw flesh. They had no facial features, just blank, blurry, and humanoid. The first time I saw them, I was around 10, living in a house in eastern Connecticut. The land itself felt cursed. Behind the house there were 2 ponds, side by side, one slightly lower than the other, where my cousins and I would go fishing. On this particular day, my cousin was standing between the 2 ponds, and I was on the far side of the lower one. From where I stood, I could see the upper pond clearly. That's when I noticed 2 of them, those blue figures walking side by side across the water, like it was just solid ground. I froze. I stood there, staring and stunned. Then I started waving frantically at my cousin, trying to get him to turn around. I don't know why I didn't just shout, but I couldn't, and he looked at me like I was nuts. I dropped my fishing pole and bolted around the water towards him. As soon as they realized I'd seen them, they turned and moved quickly, almost gliding, back across the pond and into the woods where they came from. Of course, my cousin didn't believe me. I wanted to believe. I imagined it too, until a few days later. I went back to the pond alone. While fishing, I saw a plastic bag floating near the edge. Inside were dead puppies. While not paranormal in itself, it was deeply disturbing. And I stood there when I began hearing Native American drums coming from the woods, getting closer. I dropped everything and ran home and didn't go back for days. The second time was in Bridgeport, Connecticut. We had built a little fort near a small pond in the woods, not far from Park Avenue and St. Margaret's Shrine. My friend and I were cutting through the area when I suddenly turned around, and there it was again. A blue figure, with that same faceless look, but this time with wild jet black hair. It was just standing there, lumbering slowly. I pointed it out to my friend, but they saw nothing, and I watched for a moment until it slipped out of view. The last time I saw one, or at least the last time I remember, was in Oxford, Connecticut. I was exploring a patch of deep woods with some cousins and their dog. The area was well known for strange activity, even rumors of ritual worship. At some point we split up. I found myself near a river, and for some reason I felt compelled to climb this steep, rocky hillside. It felt like a cliff at the time, especially for a 12-year-old. When I got to the top, the dog was already there, but my cousins were gone. Suddenly the dog started barking and acting nervous. I got the worst feeling of being watched. I turned around and saw another one of them. As soon as it noticed me, it bolted again into the woods. The dog took off after it. I chased the dog, and when she finally returned, we both ran all the way out of the forest. Oxford has some pretty deep woods, so that was no quick escape. But once we were out, the dog calmed down. I figured whatever it was had left. Looking back, they never seemed aggressive, more like they didn't want to be seen. But that first time, when they were creeping up behind my cousin, I swear there was something off about their intent. Still, maybe they were just curious. I don't expect anyone to believe this. Honestly, I'm still not sure if I believe it myself, but these memories are burned into my brain, and nothing I've ever seen or read has ever matched them. I've even gone back to some of those places hoping to see them again, but I never have. Has anyone ever seen anything like this? Solid blue humanoid figures, blank faces, always around water or trees. If you have, please say something, because I've been carrying this around for far too long. I'd like to start by saying that this story isn't mine, but rather something that supposedly happened to a friend of mine, who I have since lost contact with. I had known her for several years when she told me this story, and it was the only strange/paranormal tale she had, so it always had a ring of truth with me. Around 2004, she lived with her parents in a wooded area of Ontario, Canada. Their backyard had handfuls of fruit trees, and a thick forest began where their backyard ended. One night, her father was climbing the stairs to go to bed, when he happened to look out the window towards the fruit trees. A white bluish light caught his eye, meandering among their fruit trees. Not particularly bright, but not dim either. It supposedly drifted freely, about 3 inches off the ground. Thinking it was a prowler with a flashlight, he readied himself for confrontation. But as he looked closer, he realized that this light wasn't coming from a flashlight. It was just a ball of light floating around the trees. Her dad called for the family to come and see. They joined him at the window, bewildered as to what this ball of light was. Dad decided to get a closer look, but as soon as he opened the door, the light retreated to the thicker forest behind their yard, weaving through fruit trees as it moved without a sound. Creeped out, my friend and her mum went back upstairs to go to bed, trying to put it out of their minds. Her dad stayed up a bit longer, staring out the window mesmerized, watching as this light returned to their yard and just floated around. Eventually, it drifted back into the forest and disappeared. The following morning, my friend woke up to her father shouting in a panic. He had gone blind overnight. Her and her mum rushed him to the hospital, where the doctor examined him. The doctor told them that he typically only sees this kind of retinal burn from people welding without masks. It was determined that her father's blindness was thankfully temporary and would pass within a few days. I should add that her father was not a welder, but rather worked in an office. As I've said before, I have since lost contact with this friend, but as of our last conversation, the source of light could not be determined. Years ago, my then husband, now deceased, my 2-year-old son and I went to New England to see the fall colors. We stayed at a resort in New Hampshire and did day trips. It was a fun and enjoyable vacation. One particular day we drove into Vermont to do some exploring and maybe buy some maple syrup. We had packed lunch and planned on stopping somewhere, preferably at the park, to take a break and eat. Although I was navigating, I don't remember where we were that particular day. We had found a sleepy little town and were looking for a park to eat lunch. We couldn't find one, but my husband saw a sign and said there was a little lake down this particular road, so we decided to go there in hopes of finding a place to relax and eat our lunch. As I recall, the road went a mile or so through a canyon of sorts and ended at the parking lot of this pretty lake. It was quiet, and we were the only people there. We got out of our rental car and did a little scouting around. As I recall, the picnic area was older, wooden, and painted a reddish color. I remember feeling uneasy about the place and thinking reassuringly that this place must really be hopping on the 4th of July. We decided on a particular picnic bench and unpacked our lunch, but my feelings of dread were gradually increasing. I noticed that my husband was looking around a lot as he ate, not at me or our son, but at our surroundings. My son was fussy, and I was having trouble getting him to eat. This was not normal. Finally, we finished eating. Normally in a place like that, we'd take a short walk and explore a little. Instead, my husband asked me very directly if I was done. I said I was, and that I'd like to get going. I was happy to leave and couldn't get out of there fast enough. We gathered our things and trash and left quickly. We didn't say anything to each other as we drove back through the canyon to the town. Once we reached the town, we turned right, and then my husband stopped on this side of the road. Just as we looked at each other and breathed a sigh of relief, we then talked. Both my husband and I agreed that we couldn't get away from that place fast enough. He admitted that he didn't say anything because he didn't want to freak me out. I said something about it being pretty and quiet, and my husband replied, "Yeah, too quiet." He was right. It was fall in the middle of the week, so I wouldn't expect any people to be there, but there wasn't even the chirping of birds, just dead silence. I sometimes wonder what spooked us that day. All 3 of us felt whatever it was. My husband, 23, and I, 22, have been on our wedding anniversary for over a week now. We have a camper in Cherokee, North Carolina, that we have been staying in. We have an interest in abandoned things like towns and cemeteries, and we decided that we would go to visit Connor Cemetery near Couches Creek off Newfoundland Gap Road, which is near the Oconaluftee Visitor Center. When we arrive to pull off close to where the trailhead is supposed to be, we get out and start walking towards the opening in the woods where there is a trail. The trail itself is visible, but you have to be looking for it. We are walking in, heading towards where the cemetery is supposed to be. I'm in the front looking down, checking for snakes and holes, and my husband is behind me. We paused for a second and he said, "Babe, look at the statue." I start looking around and ask where. Then he points in the direction. What I was expecting was like an angel statue that you normally see in cemeteries. This was not that. I looked upwards, further up the trail, and off to the side was what appeared to be a 12 to 15 foot tall deer statue. The statue looked like it was either made up of wood or wrapped in leather hide and looked preserved. The problem was that nowhere online had mentioned this statue or anything of the sort. It started giving me this uneasy feeling because it had a strange face, and it was just a very weird place for something like that to be. My husband then said he didn't like it at all and that we should go. As soon as he said that, we turned around and left as quickly as possible. Once we got back to our car, I told him that I didn't feel right, and he agreed, and said that he saw a deer-like face with no snout and thought it had blinked. I told him what I saw. On our way back to the camper, I started thinking that I should have taken a picture, but unfortunately did not think to do it at the time. Once we were back at the camper, we started researching things and could not find where this was, not even see if it was listed. We decided to go back to a local Native American bookstore that we had gone to previously and speak to the older lady who ran it. We explained what happened, and she advised us to speak to the visitor center in the national park to see if anyone had something similar happen to them or if they knew of any native stories of something similar. She had also said that sometimes the things choose for you to be the only ones to see. We thanked the lady and left back to our camper. Now I'm here sharing this and thinking about the possibility of the thing we've seen in the woods, and if anyone has any information, I'd love to hear it. I've been experimenting using the Ghost Tube app, a basic spirit box for phones, and while it could be random, I had an encounter yesterday, and I think it's too coincidental not to be real. There's this woodland near me that I stumbled into with my dog one day in the evening. A long, unlit road leads into the woodland. At the end, a creepy old house. I couldn't even get into the woods because it felt so dark spiritually, and I could feel eyes on me. I went back in the day, and it's a nice walk, but certain areas around the path still felt dark. So yesterday I took the Ghost Tube app with me. On the way back in the area, I felt like I was being watched. I was asking questions and not getting much back. But as I walked past this ditch, I had this weird sensation and vision in my head that I wanted to lie down and be buried. I thought, whose body is there? My app then said, "It's mine." But I didn't put two and two together because I hadn't said it out loud. Then the app said, "Library." So I thought someone might have owned a library. I said, "Did you die here?" And then it said, "Truck." So I'm thinking maybe someone got run over, as it's near a mountain road. And then I got, "Caution." And I got the feeling that the spirit hanging around was to warn people what happened to them. The urban legend I have is one I live down the street from. It's Pheasant Hill Park in Dyer, Indiana, and there's a school right next to the woods, which I refuse to go into at night because of what I saw and heard in there. I've walked those woods for years, And I've had that feeling of being watched before, so I've started to spread the word. But it's not just me, there are others, and there's a story to go with it. The one that I heard is that early in the 1900s, before the school and railroad tracks were built, the town was mostly farmland and such. There was a guy who lived in the woods in a cabin. He worked as a lumberjack in town. Years later, when the tracks were built, they originally ran through the woods right behind his house. One day he was cutting down trees, and a train came through. He accidentally got hit, and his life was taken from it. Years later, probably in around the 60s or 70s, there were kids who claimed they went looking for him, because it was alleged that every Halloween night, incidentally the anniversary of his death, if you were to go into the woods in the early hours of the morning, you might just encounter him. I didn't know if this was true, but it's what I heard. And so one day I decided to see for myself. It was Halloween night, and you could barely make out the tree line from the fog. I told myself I would just take a quick look, a quick walk. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was curious, so I brought my flashlight, wearing a hoodie, and went for it. I slipped through the gap in the old chain-link fence behind the school, like I'd done many times before, and followed the narrow path that runs along the back of the soccer field before it dips into the trees. The deeper I went, the more I could feel the change. I'm not sure if it was because I was hyping myself up, or because there really was something in the air. But with every crunch of the leaves underfoot and every step I took in the gloom, I felt a growing sense of unease within me. I got to the place where the trail runs right up behind the railroad tracks. There's a section of collapsed fencing where the tracks dip slightly, and I figured that was probably where it happened, where the guy had died. I was standing there looking around, trying to feel something, when I heard something in the distance, a sound I couldn't quite make out. It startled me. I looked around, spun my flashlight about, trying to discern where the noise was coming from and what it was. But I couldn't really make it out. As I was swinging my flashlight about, I swear just for a moment, I saw a shadow not too far from me on the trail. When I swung it back, there was nothing there. Perhaps it was just my imagination. Perhaps it was the tall trees. Perhaps it was anything. But I couldn't tell for sure. I had made the decision to start going back, and as I began walking, I started hearing strange noises in the woods. I don't want to elaborate on what they were, but they spooked me something fierce, and I ran all the way back. Because if you want to test the legend, please do. I'd love to hear what everyone else encounters. Let me start off by saying I have always been a hardcore paranormal fanatic. Ghost stories, haunted places, shadow peoples, you name it, I'm into it. My two younger sisters are just as obsessed. Over the years, we've had the occasional strange noise in the night and weird feelings, but nothing truly as chilling as the summer that we went to Goatman's Bridge. Even now, I'm not entirely sure what it was we saw, but whatever it was wasn't just some local campfire tale. My family is kind of scattered. I live in Nebraska, my half-sister's with my stepmom, I guess ex-stepmom now since she and my dad are divorced, in Washington. Dad lives outside of Dallas, Texas with his new wife and my stepsister, so visits are rare, complicated, and usually short. But this summer the stars aligned. My sisters were living with Dad, and I was able to take just over a week off work to join them. Since we were all finally in one place, and since creepy adventures are basically our family bonding, we decided to check out one of Texas's most infamous urban legends, Goatman Bridge. Dad wasn't thrilled. He's deeply religious and firmly against inviting darkness into our lives. Ghosts, demons, Ouija boards, not under his roof. And also the bridge was pretty far, and he didn't like us driving that late. But I was 21, and naturally told him we were grabbing food after a day at Six Flags. But instead, I drove us to Denton, to the old Alton Bridge. The road out there was already unnerving. My GPS kept glitching, updating too slowly, and I ended up missing the turn. We had to loop around on a dark, winding country road just to find the path that took us to the bridge, which is blocked off for cars. There was a soccer game finishing up in a field about a mile away, but beyond that, everything was quiet. We parked on the gravel road and right away ran into a group of adults leaving the trail. They laughed and said, "No goat man tonight," told us to be safe and suggested checking out a creepy path just off the left of the bridge. We thanked them, ducked under the metal gate, and stepped into the forest at around 10:30 p.m. At first, the only sounds were cicadas and our own footsteps. But as we got deeper in, the forest began to feel odd. It was like the forest itself was pressing down on us. At first, the only sounds were cicadas and our own footsteps. The flashlight on my phone was barely cutting through the thick undergrowth, and I kept telling myself I was just psyching myself out. But that nagging feeling that something was watching wouldn't go away. We reached the bridge. It was darker than dark. Darkness that steals the light, and we stood there staring into the void beyond the bridge's midpoint. The woods and creek lost the shadows. Strange symbols and graffiti covered the railings. We weren't entirely sure what. We crossed slowly, reading the words, laughing nervously and trying to feel brave. I swept my light across the bridge, and that's when we saw a black mass that was human-shaped standing at the edge of the bridge. I blinked, and it was gone. Must have been a trick of the light. My sister moved over to the far end where I'd seen the figure and said quietly, "I swear something's watching me from under the bridge." Our other sister Kayla suddenly turned pale and said she felt sick. "I just thought I heard..." And that was enough for us. I told them we were leaving and checking out the other trail the group had mentioned. As we were walking towards the forest path, both my flashlight and Candace's went out at the same time, and my stomach dropped. I fumbled with my phone and got the light back on, but hers stayed dead. The atmosphere had shifted now. And then I saw it. About 20 feet away, standing at the edge of the forest trail, something was there. A tall, thin, dark figure, roughly humanoid-shaped. It was both transparent and somehow solid. Its eyes were faint, but I could feel it watching me. Was it a trick of the light? I wasn't sure, but I took one nervous step closer and then I saw it move. And then I screamed, and I told my sisters to run. They clearly hadn't seen it. They thought I was joking, which I wasn't, and we bolted. We sprinted down the trail towards the gravel lot. I looked back just once, but couldn't see it anymore. We slid under the metal fence, scrambling into the car, fumbling with the keys. I drove without thinking. My hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold the wheel. My entire body was on fire. And just before we hit the main road, we saw them. Two men dressed in white running towards the woods where we'd just come from. They didn't speak, didn't look at us, just ran, like they knew something was out there. The hour-long drive back was dead quiet and none of us could speak. I kept trying to rationalize what I saw, kept replaying it, trying to come up with a logical answer, but nothing fit. I never expected to find anything on Goatman Bridge. The Goatman was just another urban legend, something to frighten kids. Or maybe that's just what I have to tell myself. Because I'm pretty sure there's something out there at the old Alton Bridge. It's not just a story. There's an old legend in Virginia about a road hidden in Yorktown called Crawford Road. Locals have spoken about it for decades. Some say they've seen the ghost of a woman hanging from the bridge, and if you park beneath it and glance behind you at just the right moment, you'll see it. Others have reported Civil War soldiers wandering through the trees, Cars stalling inexplicably under the bridge, distant lights, screams, and shadowy figures lurking in the woods. It's the kind of place you'll read about in ghost forums late at night, but never expect to actually go there. We didn't plan to go. It sounded like a creepy adventure. It was 4 friends, Marcus, who had never had a paranormal encounter before, neither had I to be honest, Sarah, and Alex, the skeptic of the group, as well as Jaden, who'd grown up hearing ghost stories but had never seen anything himself. That afternoon, we were swapping stories about weird stuff we'd read online, and Marcus said, "I want something real to happen, like I want to actually see something for once." That got us talking about haunted places nearby, and I remember a friend from Yorktown once warning me about Crawford Road. The name rang a bell for a few of us. We pulled out our phones and started reading all the stories, how the woman had hung herself from the bridge, the apparition, the glowing lights. Jaden even found a video of someone's car getting scratched up after parking there. We were stupidly excited. We decided to go after dark, around 10:30 p.m. The first time we drove down the road, it wasn't that creepy. A few cars passed by, and there was a police cruiser parked near the bridge. Kinda killed the mood. So we drove off, grabbed food, and waited until things cleared out. We returned around 11:30, and a group of ghost hunters was parked nearby. We chatted with them briefly. They hadn't seen anything, but said the forest was giving them bad vibes. They also mentioned a path off to the side of the bridge, and told us it was creepier than the road itself. We thanked them, and climbed up on top of the bridge to explore. The asphalt was cracked and faded. We found some graffiti, including a weird circular symbol that none of us recognized, and there was also a crudely drawn pentagram, classic bridge graffiti. That's when we saw headlights approaching, so Marcus, Sarah, and I climbed down while Jaden and Alex stayed hidden on the bridge with their lights off. Barely 2 minutes later, we all hear fast footsteps and panicked voices. Jaden and Alex sprinted down from the bridge, out of breath and pale as ghosts. "There was someone up there," Jaden said, eyes wide. "She came out of the woods, a tall woman in white, and she walked straight for the bridge." Naturally, instead of leaving, we did the dumb horror movie thing and went back up to look, but she was gone. But then, just as we were scanning the road and woods, a scream could be heard echoing through the night. It came deep from within the forest, and we all ran. The ghost hunting group bailed in their truck. We jumped in my car and took off down Crawford Road, phones out, windows down, taking pictures as we drove, still hoping to catch something on camera. Then Sarah screamed, "Go, go, go." She was leaning halfway out the window looking behind us. Once we were far enough away, she finally told us what she saw, a dark figure on all fours running after the car. None of us could process it. We pulled into a nearby lot shaking and started reviewing the photos and videos, and what we saw scared us. Marcus had been recording the whole time. We played it back. We could hear the scream that sent us running, but there was something else layered underneath it. A garbled, wet crackling. Jaden had multiple shots with strange glowing orbs, some faint, others bright, and one of Marcus's photos came out completely white like overexposure. But none of the others were like that. What creeped us out even more was that both Sarah and Alex, who were sitting on opposite sides of the car, captured a glowing blue thing hovering around the background of their photos. But the photos made us all go silent. Alex had taken a picture of the side view mirror, and in its reflection was a pale face, gaunt and unnatural, staring at the car with pitch dark eyes. We should have gone home, but we didn't. We drove back down Crawford Road for one more pass, taking more pictures. At first, it was uneventful until we got near the bridge again. Jaden's voice cut through the silence. "Someone standing there." None of us saw it, but when we reviewed the final batch of photos, Marcus had caught something worse. Perched on top of the broken post, maybe 20 feet from the bridge, was a dark creature on all fours with glowing eyes. We left Crawford Road for good. When we finally got home, we stepped out the car and noticed more evidence we hadn't seen. Handprints on the windows, Sarah and Jaden's side, some smeared like someone had dragged their hand across the glass, as well as a scratch mark along the door on the back of the car. Since then, I've been digging deeper into other people's experiences there. Some have mentioned the scream, some say it's an animal, but others aren't so sure. I spent a number of years performing on the Renaissance Fair circuit, traveling across the country, directing troops, wielding blades, and breathing fire for crowds who lived for fantasy. It sounds fun, and it was. Most nights, though, I slept in tents, crammed shoulder to shoulder with other performers, in small ramshackle villages, thrown together on the fairground. But now and then, if luck would swing my way, I could find a place with actual walls, a storage booth, a prop house, or once a stage. That's what happened at the Ohio Renaissance Fair. I scored a key to the Gloriana stage, a 2-story structure on site. It was solid but not glamorous. The back door was padlocked from the outside, the windows and front door could be locked from within, and I'd leave one window unlatched during the day so I could slip in at night. It felt safe, overlooked and cozy. There was a hammock upstairs, and no one batted an eye when I moved in with a few essentials, a sleeping bag, a mailbag stuffed with clothes, and a wool blanket that I'd used since college. Nights there were usually calm. I'd climb up to the balcony, light a clove cigarette, and gaze out across the shadowy lanes of the deserted fair. Beyond the stage, the woods pressed right up against the back wall, dense knotted trees and brush. It was too tight back there to feel comfortable, but facing the fair interior was a different story. That's until the creepy night. That night had started like dozens before. I'd been drinking with the jousters, mead, and they broke away, and I made my usual walk through the dark paths to the Gloriana. The moon was thin, offering very little moonlight, and as I moved along the narrow corridor behind the stage, something rustled in the brush to my right. I stopped and listened. I didn't hang around, though. I picked up the pace, rounded to the front and pried open the window, which I had left cracked open, and then climbed inside. Everything looked the same. Still, I did a full check with my flashlight. There were no signs of entry or weird smells and nothing out of place, so I relocked the window and climbed up the ladder to the balcony. Up top, it was quiet. I lit a clove, the sweet spice cutting through the chill. I could hear the chirping of crickets, and somewhere far off laughter from a distant campsite. I leaned on the railing, breathing deep, letting the night wrap around me. And then suddenly, an absence of noise became noticeable. The crickets stopped, the buzzing, the chirping, the nocturnal hum that blankets the world in white noise had been silenced like a switch. And that's when I heard something instead. A croaking, deep guttural sound. At first I thought it was a bullfrog. There were enough around for it to make sense. But something in that croak made my spine prickle. It wasn't a frog. It was a voice saying my name. Bobby. The sound was twisted. It was like something trying to mimic a frog, but this was no game. Bobby. I froze. My mind screamed. No one calls me that. I hadn't used that name in years. I hated it. The only people from my childhood ever did, and none of them were here. Another voice joined, and then a third, each one croaking my name in that same drawn-out, wet rasp. Bobby. I dropped the clove and ducked inside, grabbing my maglite. It was one of those heavy ones that you could swing like a club if things got bad, and I crept to the back and shined my light out across the trees. There was nothing. But then I heard it one more time. Bobby. My blood ran cold. I needed something sharp, a knife. I scrambled downstairs and grabbed my belt dagger. 5 inches of dull pop metal, useless in a real fight, but I wasn't thinking rationally. I just needed some form of protection. Then I heard long, deliberate scratching across the back door. Not like someone was trying to break in, but they wanted me to know they were there, and that they were playing. I backed away. That door was padlocked, sure, but I wasn't the only one with a key. And suddenly, the silence, the smothering, heavy quiet felt alive, like something was unfolding around me, and I was just a participant in something that was going to go down regardless. I bolted. I unlatched the stage window, eased it open, and slipped out. Even then, I could hear the voices croaking my name through the dark, and nails dragging across the wood. But I didn't look back. I ran across the fair, through the moonlight, past tents and wagons and food stalls like skeletons in the dark, and I ran until I made it to the jouster world, the barn loft some of us crashed in during hard nights and didn't sleep. Come morning, I returned to the Gloriana. All the windows were open. The back door was open as well, padlock gone. My things, my blankets, my clothes, my gear had been thrown everywhere, inside out. I didn't sleep there again. I stayed with the jousters for the next 2 weeks. Then we moved on to the Texas circuit. I never figured out who or what it was. I just called them the creepy. Still do. And to this day, if someone calls me Bobby, I jump out my skin. I'm not sure what it was, but whatever it is, I'm pretty sure it came from those woods. I will not be returning. So here in the Sierra Nevadas is the only place I've heard of this specific thing. More of a local legend. You can take this all with grains of salt if you need to, but I swear this story is true and I have my brother to back me up. So, growing up, I didn't live on a reservation, but about 5 miles away from the closest one. It actually butts up to my grandfather's property. I still grew up with everyone, all the elders are very spiritual. My dad was a special case, he was surrounded by paranormal activity all through his childhood. He talked about it when he was drunk quite often, considering he drank to keep the demons at bay, so to say. There was this one legend that he told me early on. Living in a very rural mountain house on a road known for its activity, even rural compared to the small town, boys and men would pee outside quite often, just quick and easy. My dad thought he always kicked dirt over his pee, yes, like a dog, and I asked him when I was really young and imitated him one time why he did that. He told me a story that I never forgot because it scared the crap out of me. He said there was an ancient medicine man, neither man nor beast, something in between. Now this medicine man wasn't a healer, he was evil. He told me that when a native man or kid would step off the trail to pee, they needed to kick dirt over it. If they didn't, the medicine man, he had a name that you're not supposed to speak or he hears you, will walk the trails at night. Once he comes across your scent, he'll pick a handful of dirt of where you peed and smell it. He puts it in a medicine bag he wears around his neck and hunts you. He hunts at night, especially if you're a bad kid. Well, my brother and I kind of grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. At the time, I was a big pothead with no money, and my brother was a full-blown drug addict who moved back for a few months, just as I had when I was about 19, putting him at about 26. We were doing a lot of bad stuff, especially in the neighboring community, and were definitely bad kids. So when I was in high school, there was a guy who moved on our road, between our place and my grandpa's ranch. He grew a lot of weed. I knew the trail to get there, and me and a few buddies went to cut his crop one summer night. It was a good summer, needless to say. Bored one night hanging out with my brother, I told him about the crop. Turns out he knew about it too, and we decided that night to go get some fresh buds. Now, our road is long, windy, one lane and dark, extremely dark. There was a little bit of moonlight out so we could see, but not much. Our eyes adjusted. My brother, being paranoid and on stimulants, decided we should walk the old railroad grade that runs parallel to the road just beneath. It's where people travelled when the road was still a railroad. I agreed, but said we should go up to the main road because that's where the trailhead to the guy's place was. Well, my brother, genius that he is, says the dogs will bark and there will be a trail cam. He told us to stay on the trail and cut through the brush, which we tried, and we couldn't because the brush was practically a wall. Now at this point we're a lot closer to our grandfather's property, and we're close with a guy who rents a house on the other side of it. It's about a 1,200 acre property that I now live on, so we decide to go to his place and stay the rest of the night. A few things you should know. My grandpa refuses to speak about anything paranormal, but he's adamant that you do not go on his property without permission, and if you're given permission you stick to where he tells you. And lastly, you never ever go past the yard on his property at night. We tried countless times to even get my dad to talk about it, but he would just say something like, "You don't want to go there after midnight, trust me." And my dad's not a fearful man. Along the road there's a waterfall where a bridge crosses. At that point the railroad grade is thousands of yards beneath it, so you cross the creek. It was dry, as it was the middle of summer. We stopped there and I took a pee. We both did. I didn't know why, but I didn't kick dirt. I thought about it while walking away but didn't say anything. I should probably mention I had a shotgun and my brother had his compound bow. One of the reasons we decided to stay off the road even with a little traffic. This is when a turd hit the fan. 3 houses are on my grandfather's land. We were coming up the hill to one he rents to a lovely old couple. We were walking up this road that used to be a cattle transport road but hadn't been used in a while. And we were being as quiet as we could, as we weren't supposed to be there. On our left is an open field at our 10 o'clock, and the road continues. On your right, the road is cut into a hill, so a wall of dirt above our heads. I'm 6'1" to give you an idea of the height. As we're walking, on high alert, we both hear something. It sounds like a horse, but there are no more horses on the property, haven't been for years. We both exchange looks that we can barely see because it's so dark, and before we know it, it's running at us, not galloping, running. 2 hooves hit the ground in very long strides, strides that tell you this thing's probably 2 to 3 feet taller than us. I'm not too prideful to admit I froze in my tracks, shotgun in hand. I couldn't even aim it. My brother leapt backwards and claimed he drew his bow, but didn't release a bolt. We were dumbstruck. This thing is coming at us like a freight train in a few seconds that felt like hours, and you could hear its breathing, huffing hard like a buffalo. We could hardly make out the outline, but it was tall and humanoid. My mind pictured scraggly on horse legs running on cloven hooves in my last moments, or so I thought. As the thing got spitting distance to us, I realized my brother later recounted that there was something chasing it. I have no frame of reference for what was behind it, because it drew in the darkness and was darker than the night. That's the only reason you could see the outline of this thing. It was fast. It had run the same distance it had in just a few seconds, and it seemed it was on the hoofed thing's tail, as the hooves planted one last time mere feet from me. And with one more breath it leapt clear above us onto the bank behind, and whatever was chasing it slid hard like a horse breaking for dear life, and then poof, it was gone. All we hear is this thing now still running behind us through manzanita and oak trees, snapping giant limbs like a bulldozer in the night. We stood, regained our composure, what was left of it, and charted our course. We still had quite a ways to go to get to our friend's place. Do we go in the direction of whatever was behind the thing, or do we take a lesser-used trail behind the old folks' houses and towards the hooved beast, still snapping limbs and stalking around in the darkness? It might have been foolish for us, but we both decided we didn't want to deal with whatever was chasing it, so we went towards the beast as quietly as we could. We heard the odd step and branch break behind us as we made it the rest of the way. We both felt an immediate sense of calm the moment we passed the gate that bordered the yard of the house. We woke up our friend and shared a cigarette as we told him the story, still shaking and hardly wanting to speak of it. To this day, I don't know what we came across. We never spoke to Grandpa about it, and this is the first time I've written it out. I'm 30 now. I live in the house that we were trying to make it to all night. I don't venture past my gate at night unless I'm driving out. I think we saw the medicine man, though. My brother is still unsure. I have 2 coonhounds, and the other night, during the floods, one of them was begging to go out. This was around 11 p.m. His tracking collar died, and by 2 a.m. my mum and I were out looking for him. Now my mum is superstitious, but she doesn't take me seriously when I bring up things like never whistle in the woods, and if you hear something, you didn't hear it. Of course, I remind her, and when the first thing she does when she steps outside is whistles, well, we don't find him and decide to wait until someone calls and I go to bed. Around 4 a.m. I wake up and start making coffee. I turn around and suddenly something feels off. The house feels different, like I'm being watched. Now our front door is broken, and sometimes it will open by itself, which is no big deal. But our back door? That one has 3 locks, which I triple check every night. Both doors were now wide open. I shut them, grab something to protect myself and scan the house, but can't find anything. The day goes on normally. My house isn't that old, but it was very badly built, so critters sometimes sneak inside the walls. We also have a crawl space under the house, but the drop is so heavy that nothing, not even a rat, could climb onto it. 2 days later, I get home from school. My brother is studying late at a friend's, and both parents are at work. I'm completely alone. I go to the freezer to grab a popsicle when I hear a crack. At first I thought the floor was collapsing, but it feels sturdy. Whatever it is, it sounds big and heavy coming from beneath me, like something is scratching or straight up munching on something down there. I call my parents, and my dad says he'll check it out, but the entrance to the crawl space has been sealed for months, and when he gets home it's still intact. The next night, I pull an all-nighter because I'm drowning in homework. At some point I go to grab another popsicle, and as I open the freezer drawer, the stove light flickers. Weird, but maybe the bulb needed changing. Then the overhead light flickers. I have this thing where, if anything even remotely seems paranormal, I say, unless you want to pay rent, get out. I messed up. A cup falls off the counter, a cabinet swings open and I'm scared, but I refuse to let whatever this is get the satisfaction. So I go to bed like nothing happened. The next night I try to actually get some sleep. I've always been the type to wake up throughout the night, and around 2 a.m. I feel it, something watching me from the window. I told my friend about everything, and he said it sounds like a mimic, but I'm not in danger, and it hasn't tried to hurt me. I'm not sure what's going on, and they said, it's possible. They also said the name, Jude. Now my name is Jade, so I assumed the app didn't have it in the word bank. Anyway, I take all these things with a pinch of salt, but I did some googling and was freaked out when I read the story of a girl whose body had been laid in a ditch and covered with branches off the exact path I was walking on. She was a student and was kidnapped by someone from her church, fed drugs, life taken, and dumped in the woodland to be found 2 months later. Found her keys in his car, which he used to transport the body. Imagine my surprise when I opened the app to review the words to see that the last one I hadn't heard out loud at the time was Holy. Her name was Joy, another J name. Could be a stretch, but taking into account the limited words on the word bank, library I think, was a way of telling me she studied, it seems all too real. I just felt so sad. It didn't feel like malice, it felt more like she couldn't move on and was scared for other lone women and was trying to warn me. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. I hope you have enjoyed tonight's collection of scary stories from Haunted Woods. It's always fun to venture back. I would like to remind anyone who is a patron, or is planning to be so, to give me your birthday date if it's during the summer, because I am going to be unable to record with the kids in this house. And also spend time with my children, because they don't have school. So, get that sent in soon so that I can get your topic, find the stories, record everything, and make the video, please. But that's it from me. I'd like to extend a huge thank you, as always, to my current members and patrons whose names can be seen on screen. And if you would like some really cool perks for signing up, follow the link in the description to find out more. But that's it from me. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one. Good night.